Hello and welcome to another behind the scenes edition here at the Shippensburg Historical Society. My name is John Miller. I'm the executive director here. And today I'm going to give you a sneak peek behind the scenes of one of our brand new exhibits for 2021. But before I do that, I have to give a shout out to Mr. Bill Shirley. It was his collaboration along with one of his ideals for us to do this exhibit. And because of that, much of what you're about to see comes from his personal collection, as well as some of the stories are from his personal experience. The Gulf War, as we recall back in 1990 going into 1991, I don't know where you were, but I remember where I was. And I remember the 24-hour news cycle that was sitting on cable TV that was showing Operation Desert Storm as it was unfolding. And I just remember sitting with the other neighbors and all of us pretty much sitting in the living room silent and just watching the U.S. Armed Forces do their job, especially with the airstrikes. So fast forward to 30 years, we remember the Gulf War in many different ways. And this exhibit here pretty much kind of showcases the stories of a non-combatant who served with the U.S. Army safety group. So again, some of the things that you're going to see is coming from Mr. Shirley's experiences during this time period. And we will be doing a video with Mr. Shirley doing an interview. That way we can go ahead and showcase that. And you can hear some of his experiences because I found his stories to be quite interesting and in some cases intense, but yet at the same time, other stories that are just as funny. So come on, let's go ahead and take a quick peek behind the scenes. So the Gulf War through the eyes of a non-combatant. This exhibit has all kinds of interesting things in it. I remember growing up as a child seeing many of these yellow ribbons as well as these flags hanging from the front porches of houses. And I remember that when the soldiers started coming home, everybody was showing their support for our American troops that fought overseas. And of course, I also remember a lot of these buttons here being worn by the adults. And I even remember going into stores and seeing all kinds of memorabilia that was being sold from the form of baseball cards, which I'll show you that here in a minute, all the way down to t-shirts. So some of the items that you're going to see in here may not make sense to you, but they have unique stories behind them, such as this driver's guide to Saudi Arabia. A lot of fantastic and fascinating stories that Bill was sharing with me regarding the highway system and how they would train American personnel on how to drive on those roads because of the fact that, well, they're not exactly the same as what they are over here, especially with how people drive with care. And of course, I remember as a child hearing on the news about chemicals of or weapons of mass destruction. And of course, this here's a manual on how to operate the NBC instructions, which is basically a nuclear, biological, chemical suit. Here we have a map that's going to be hung in the room here, and that kind of showcases the layout of Operation Desert Storm. We'll go ahead and slide that off to the side. Here we have point of contact business cards. And I want you to notice between these two right here, because you have the English setting, and then after that you also have the Arabic setting. And of course, one way to get familiar with the area that you're at, we have a lot of these kind of like tourist brochures with maps. So we have one from 1991 with Kuwait, Saudi Arabia. And then for anybody who served in the military during that time period, you probably recognize a lot of these hand manuals, especially the one in the right upper corner, How They Fought, Desert Shield, and Order of Battle Handbook. Those are real interesting when you go through them. And then here we have the operations map where the U.S. military was located at. We got Jack and Jill located right here. Of course, if anybody recognizes the Cobar Towers, I have a photograph on that of that on display here. But you would take this highway here, and then Cobar Towers would be toward the direction there. Now, out of several hundred, possibly up to 1,000 photographs, obviously I couldn't showcase everything, but these were some of the best ones that I've seen, the ones that I kind of liked. Showcases how the tanks would come in green, but then they had to be painted desert, brown and tan. This here is for when those machines would come back into America, so they would drive up on these, and then after that they would have to get a complete washing. From the shipping label down to the sign there for safety. And just some of the humor. We never met a Scud or Patriots didn't like. Here's a letter here establishing the U.S. Army Support Group. Propaganda items. Down to different money. Of course, you recognize that gentleman right there. That's Saddam Hussein. To souvenirs. And of course, we have another map here. And of course, we have a timeline. So of course, March 3rd is when Iraq accepts the terms of a ceasefire agreement. Little history here on the BDU, or the battle dress uniform. This is known as the chocolate chip camo, which is a desert style camo. And then this was known as the coffee stain camo, which came later. So we have the uniform here, worn by Mr. Shirley. He was the safety officer. And of course we have the patch here that denotes the fact that he is a civilian. Interesting story on the woodland camo jacket there. And they had to go over to the Air Force in order to get extra supplies. And that was one of the only things off of his list that the Air Force had. And of course, we talk a little bit about the main camouflage used by the U.S. Army, going from woodland down to the UCP, which is the Universal Camouflage Pattern. April 1st of this year, the Air Force went ahead and retired their version of that, which is the digital tiger stripes. And now, for the most part, much of the military wears the OCP, which is the Operation Camouflage uniform. Of course, we have Mr. Shirley here, who's being decorated with the Civilian Declaration and Narrative, which is a Superior Civilian Service Award. So we have the photograph of him receiving that, as well as the narrative and the medal here. Different souvenirs. You know, from patches to postcards, stickers, to even more patches, keychains. I remember the baseball cards. I had a couple of those when I was a child. And of course, some of his experiences of what he witnessed, such as the Highway of Death. And this is officially known as Highway 80. It runs from Kuwait City to Iraq. Between 1,400 to 2,000 vehicles were hit or abandoned on the strip of highway. And you can just see some of the devastation. Exposure reports that were declassified regarding certain chemicals such as paint. Of course, a sign here. And then some more photographs. And some of these were actually, when I chose these, I wanted to kind of show a little bit of humor, but at the same time, the realness of the situation overseas. Such as the minefield here in Kuwait. And you can see some of the mines that are sticking out. To Khobar Towers, where many of the servicemen stayed. And here's another close-up of it. And just hearing some of the stories of the wolf or the Wolfie Burger stands located over there. So during our next video that we do, Mr. Shirley is going to go ahead and tell us a lot about his experiences, as well as what he experienced too. He's pretty much going to just go ahead and lay it out for all of us. Well, I hope you liked the virtual tour that I just gave you of the new exhibit here. I can't wait until we have people come through the facility to enjoy all these new exhibits that we're doing. Just remember, for the time being, it is a reservation only to enter into the facility. Reservations are simple. All you got to do is just make a phone call or email us, and reservations can be made anywhere from Tuesday through Saturday from the hours of 10 to 3. So if you're interested and you want to see this personally, give us a call or give us an email. Till then, take care.